After waking up as the most hated villain in the country, I decided to just give up and embrace the lazy life. The reason was simple. My wife, Ava, was a high society heiress with more money than God. I could blow through her cash and live like a king without lifting a finger. I dragged Ava along to film a celebrity couple's travel reality show. While the other couple spent every waking second performing for the cameras and faking their romance, I stayed in the hotel room. I was perfectly content playing video games and rotting in bed all day. The wildest part was when I actually looked into the lens and told Ava she should just divorce me and split the assets down the middle. To my surprise, our sham of a marriage became a massive hit on the internet. Fans were obsessed, claiming that even the most head-over-heels couples couldn't replicate the weirdly sweet chemistry of our bickering. I had transmigrated into a novel as James, a disgraced actor who had been canceled by everyone for being a pretentious prick. In the original plot, my character was obsessed with the second female lead, Ava, following her around like a lost puppy. He was too stupid to realize that his rival, Ethan, was an Oscar-winning superstar who had everyone in his pocket. Ethan had eventually married the story's heroine, Hannah, out of sheer spite. Not to be outdone, Ava made an impulsive move and married me, the villain, just to save face. Not long after the wedding, Ethan and Hannah were invited to star in a reality show about newlywed life. The original James was so desperate to compete with Ethan that he forced Ava to join the show too. He spent the whole time faking a perfect romance and picking fights with Ethan, only to get humiliated in every single episode. He ended up as the laughingstock of the internet, serving only to make Ethan's marriage look like a fairy tale by comparison. Ava's hatred for him grew every day they were on set. As soon as the cameras stopped rolling, they filed for a lightning-fast divorce. The original James was such a scumbag that he demanded a $100 million settlement from the Sterling family before he would even touch the divorce papers. Predictably, he blew through that settlement money in record time. He ended up miserable and alone, eventually dying from stress-induced illness. I had the misfortune of waking up in his body at the worst possible moment. I arrived right as filming for the show began, just as all the celebrity couples were checking into their hotel in Charleston. The crew had booked massive 2-bedroom suites for everyone. Based on their history, Ava and the original James always slept in separate rooms to avoid each other. When I opened my eyes, however, I realized I was sprawled across Ava's bed. She had just stepped out of the shower, her skin still damp, and her silk robe cinched tight around her waist. Damn, she looked incredible, the kind of woman only a guy like Ethan was supposed to end up with. Ava swept her hair up, a few loose strands falling over her eyes, though that didn't stop her from giving me a massive eye roll. She looked at me with pure disdain. "What the hell are you doing in here?" she asked, her voice as cold as a winter morning in Chicago. I scrambled off the bed in embarrassment, but as I moved, a small square packet of protection fell from the covers. Ava's face twisted in disgust. "James, I've made this clear," she said, narrowing her eyes. "There is zero emotion in this marriage, so stay on your side of the suite." I froze, realizing just how creepy the original James must have been. Still, I couldn't help but wonder why she even agreed to do this show if she hated him so much. I nodded quickly, even giving her a little round of applause to show I was totally on board with the staying away part. I flashed her a grin and said, "You know what? You're absolutely right. If we're going to keep our distance, being on a reality show about our marriage is a terrible idea. Let's just call the producers and quit right now." Ava went completely still, looking like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. She knit her brows and started studying me like I was a science experiment. "Look, lady, I know I'm different, but you're looking at the new and improved James now. My only goal in life was to get that divorce settlement and retire to a beach in Florida." Ava kept squinting at me, and her gaze was so intense I almost lost my nerve. Instead of shrinking away, I stood up to my full height and stared right back at her. After a tense silence, she finally looked away and muttered, We're still doing the show." I let out a dry laugh. According to the book, Ava only signed up for this mess to keep tabs on Ethan and see if his marriage to Hannah was actually the fairy tale everyone claimed it was. She hadn't even run into her first love yet, so there was no way she was going to quit the competition now. The tables had turned, and now she was the one desperate to stay on the air. I gave her a mocking smirk and said, "Fine, but you better bring your A game. Don't embarrass me on national television." I slammed the door behind me and headed back to my own room, collapsing onto the king-size mattress. I started planning my future. We only had 2 weeks of filming left, and as soon as the finale aired, I was going to be a very rich bachelor. I'd live off the interest of my settlement and never work another day in my life. I had absolutely no intention of winning Ava over or fixing this marriage. If I just stuck to my plan of doing the bare minimum, these 2 weeks would be over before I knew it. I tucked myself in and had a good laugh. The next day was a free day for the contestants, so I slept in until 11 in the morning. Meanwhile, the other couples had been up since dawn, desperately trying to entertain their followers on TikTok and Instagram. Everyone else was out, doing something productive like hitting the gym or cooking gourmet meals for the cameras. Ethan and Hannah had already created their first viral moment of the season. They were in the kitchen, gazing into each other's eyes and feeding each other strawberries while the cameras caught every angle. Ethan's movie star looks were perfect for high definition, and his fans were losing their minds in the comments. People were spamming the live chat with messages about how lucky Hannah was and what a perfect husband Ethan was. Then people started asking, where the hell is James? Usually he's such a camera hog, but he's totally MIA today. He's been asleep for 5 hours while Ava has been out handling everything alone, one commenter noted. Another added, "I still don't get how a loser like James ended up with Ava Sterling. She's gorgeous, filthy rich, and way too good for a D-list jerk like him. Nobody will even hire him for a commercial anymore because his reputation is so trash," someone else snarked. "They're the most mismatched couple in history." I couldn't care less about what people on the internet thought as I splashed some water on my face and wandered down to the hotel lobby. Ethan and Hannah were still acting like teenagers in the kitchen. They couldn't even slice a cucumber without stopping for a dramatic, lingering stare, and washing lettuce apparently required a full makeout session. They had volunteered to make lunch for everyone, but at the rate they were going, we'd all be dead of starvation before the first course was served. Ethan spotted me and flashed a perfect, white-toothed grin. "Look who finally decided to join the living," he joked. Since the cameras were rolling, he was playing the role of the friendly, supportive frenemy, acting like we were old buddies. It was honestly nauseating. I didn't need him to tell me I was late. The internet had already spent all morning dragging me for being a lazy slob. I ignored him and walked over to the fridge to find a snack, but Ethan decided to follow me and corner me by the door. He let out a long, dramatic sigh, looking at me with feigned concern. "Do you have any idea how Ava is doing? You were busy sleeping while she was feeling sick and couldn't even fix herself a meal. I actually had to step in and make her a sandwich myself." He looked like his heart was breaking for her. "If you're going to be her husband, you can't just act like she doesn't exist," he lectured. "You need to step up and actually take care of her for once." The live stream viewers were eating it up. "Ethan is such a gentleman," one person commented. "My husband wouldn't even notice if I was sick, but Ethan is out here taking care of other people's wives." They were all praising him for being so thoughtful while bashing me for being a deadbeat. "James is a total loser. He doesn't deserve Ava," another user wrote. "If you've seen the way he acts on set, you know he's a lost cause." I'm just counting down the days until the divorce announcement. I ignored the chatter and pulled a pre-made sandwich out of the fridge, taking a huge bite. When I didn't respond, Ethan put on a humble face. "I'm sorry. Do you think I'm overstepping? I just couldn't stand by and watch her suffer while you were upstairs snoring." I could feel a headache coming on. I wasn't in the mood for his fake hero act. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Yeah, you are meddling. And let's be real, the production crew made these sandwiches, so stop acting like you're Gordon Ramsay. Also, for your information, Ava is deathly allergic to peanut butter, so that sandwich you gave her was basically a death warrant." Ethan's face went pale, and he nervously licked his lips. "I was just trying to help," he stammered. I knew his type. He'd spend 2 hours making a special meal that tasted like cardboard, and we'd all end up ordering pizza anyway. I gave him a fake smile and said, I appreciate the thought, but I think I'll skip lunch today. In the original novel, Ava spent the day at the hospital visiting an old family housekeeper, while James went to a red carpet event and made a total fool of himself. Back then, the internet was savage. People were saying that marrying into money didn't make him a winner. It just made him a pathetic gold digger. He's so desperate, it's hard to watch, they had said. Yeah, sure, I was a pathetic loser, but I was a loser who was about to walk away with $100 million. Honestly, if being a loser paid that well, I was happy to take the title. I spent the afternoon playing games in the living room, and Ava still hadn't come back. Once it got dark, I ordered some Thai food and started scrolling through TikTok while I ate. I had just started a video when the front door swung open, and Ava finally walked in after being gone all day. She was wearing a sleek black dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, looking every bit the sophisticated heiress. But because I have the worst luck in the world, the video that started playing at full volume was a gossip clip all about her. Ava Sterling is the ultimate American sweetheart, the narrator in the video gushed. She's got the brains, the money, and let's talk about that body. The screen was filled with high-res paparazzi shots of her looking flawless. I felt like an idiot. I thought I had the volume down low enough that she wouldn't notice, but apparently Ava had ears like a hawk. She walked over with a slow, deliberate pace and sat down right across from me. The guy on the screen kept talking. The only tragedy is that she's already married to that loser James, he said. But whatever, she'll be single soon enough. Next up is... I fumbled to kill the app, and the room went dead silent. I shoved a forkful of noodles into my mouth, trying to look like I hadn't just been caught watching videos of my own wife. But Ava was staring at me, her eyes boring holes into my skull. I gave a tactical cough and said, Don't get the wrong idea. I'm totally over you. I was actually just looking at potential options for my next wife after our divorce is finalized. It had nothing to do with you. Ava narrowed her eyes, searching my face for any sign that I was bluffing. I didn't blink. I was dead serious about that settlement money. Honestly, all I could think about was the bank account balance I'd have in a few weeks. I wasn't thinking about her looks at all. I got up to throw away my trash, making sure to keep a respectable distance. Just as I was walking away, she said, You've been different lately. I shrugged. Well, they say a smart man knows when to quit while he's ahead. I finally realized I'm not in your league. So don't worry, I won't be bothering you anymore. Ava just sat there, continuing to study me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. I headed back to my room and pulled out my phone to scroll through Twitter. Of course, that same stupid video of Ava popped up on my feed again. In a moment of sheer annoyance, I tapped on the comments and wrote, Don't worry, guys. She'll be single and back on the market in no time. Day one of my lazy new life was a success, and by day two, I was fully leaning into it. The call time was 8 a.m., and while the other guys were dressed in designer gear, I threw on an oversized t-shirt and some cheap flip-flops. I wandered downstairs, still yawning and looking like I just rolled out of bed. Ava and Hannah were busy organizing their gear, while Ethan was playing the hero, carrying everyone's luggage out to the car. David, the older actor, was helping with the equipment for the day's shoot. As soon as I stepped into the frame, the live chat exploded with new insults. Who invited the homeless guy? One person joked. James looks like he's going to a gas station at 3 a.m., another added. He's not even helping, he's just standing there trying to look cool. I ignored them and found a chair in the corner of the lobby, making sure there was plenty of space between me and Ava. To my shock, Ava did something completely out of character. She walked straight over to me and sat in the chair right next to mine. I was stunned. Was she having some kind of mental breakdown? I could feel her eyes on me the whole time, watching me like she was trying to catch me doing something wrong. Maybe she actually believed me when I said I wanted a divorce, and now she was worried I'd do something to embarrass her family on air. The day's challenge was a hike up a local mountain followed by a picnic. I immediately tracked down a producer. Hey, do we actually have to walk? Is there a gondola or something? The producer looked confused. If you take the lift, we won't have enough footage of you and Ava for the episode. I wave him off. I don't care, I told him. Seriously, did I look like someone who was worried about his career at this point? Give my screen time to Ethan and Hannah, I suggested. I'm sure the fans would love more of their fake flirting. But the producers weren't having it. They were paying me specifically to be the chaotic villain who gets everyone talking on Twitter. I only became famous because my agency marketed me as a darker version of Ethan. We looked similar enough that they could sell me as his bad boy rival. We were even in a movie together where he played the hero and I played the loser who tried to steal his girl. The whole thing was just one big publicity stunt. The producers weren't about to let a golden opportunity like this slip away. Since I was under contract, I had to suck it up and get in the van with the rest of the cast. David, the senior actor, was acting as the unofficial host, trying to get some interesting conversations going for the microphones. Before long, the conversation turned to everyone's origin stories. David and his wife, Anna, told a sweet story about falling in love on a movie set 20 years ago. They were basically Hollywood royalty, the couple everyone looked up to. Ethan's story sounded like a cheesy rom-com script. He talked about meeting Hannah at a charity gala and how it was love at first sight. He kept throwing in little details about how obsessed he was with her and how she was the center of his universe. The fans on the live stream were swooning. They are literally soulmates, one person typed. After Ethan finished his performance, he turned to me with a smug grin. Enough about us, he said. James, what about you and Ava? How did you two end up getting hitched? According to the book, James and Ava's relationship was a total disaster. He had basically begged her to marry him, and she'd only said yes to get back at Ethan. In reality, they had never even shared a proper kiss. They were essentially strangers living in the same house. I knew Ethan was trying to embarrass me. I just chuckled and said, honestly, I basically begged and pleaded until she gave in. But if I'm being real, being married to her is way more work than being single. I miss having my own space. The van went dead silent. Everyone there was a professional actor, so they kept their faces neutral, but you could feel the awkwardness. Finally, David tried to save the moment. Well, he laughed nervously. All newlyweds go through a rough patch. When Anna and I first got married, I think I threatened to move out every other week. As soon as he stopped talking, Ava looked down, her face flushing a deep crimson. Actually, she murmured, I've had a crush on James since we were in high school. I stared at her like she'd just grown a second head, and the rest of the cast looked just as stunned. I turned to her, completely bewildered. Did that sandwich Ethan gave you have some kind of hallucinogen in it? I asked. David's wife, Anna, laughed loudly to break the tension. Oh, look at him. He's so shocked, he doesn't know what to do. Go on, James. Give your wife some love. If you don't appreciate a woman like that, someone else surely will, Anna teased. The mood in the van lightened up as they all assumed we were just having a lover spat. The moment the camera panned away, I shot Ava a look that said, What the hell are you playing at? To my surprise, she didn't snap back at me. She just kept looking at me with this intense, unreadable expression. Her eyes were locked on mine the entire ride, making me feel incredibly self-conscious and more than a little weirded out. Without thinking, I reached out and gently took her chin in my hand, physically turning her head so she was looking out the window instead of at me. The second my fingers brushed her skin, I felt a jolt of electricity shoot up my arm. It was so intense it actually gave me goosebumps. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned and stared out the window, trying to get my heart rate under control. The live stream was going wild. Wait, I thought they hated each other, one comment read. Did you see the way she was looking at him? That was definitely not hatred. James was so cold to her, and she looked so sad. Another fan wrote, Why is this actually kind of adorable? I think I'm starting to ship them. Before the internet could decide if they loved us or hated us, the van pulled up to the base of the mountain. It was a 2-hour hike to the summit. The producers announced that there were 3 designated photo spots along the trail. Every couple had to take a photo together that was both creative and romantic to prove how in love they were. The fans would vote on the best picture, and the winners would get a featured segment in the next episode. In this business, everyone was desperate for more followers and more airtime. The prize was supposedly a gourmet meal, but for most actors, being hungry was just a lifestyle choice. Ethan wrapped his arm around Hannah and gave her a look that belonged on a movie poster. Let's do the pose from our wedding announcement, he suggested. That photo had been the #1 trending topic for 24 hours when they first got married. Even their haters had to admit they looked perfect together. Ethan turned to us with a patronizing smile. "What about you guys? Do you have a signature pose?" I just shrugged. There were no wedding photos for us. James and Ava had eloped at a courthouse and moved into separate rooms before the ink was even dry on the license. I looked him right in the eye and said, "We don't even have a single photo together, Ethan." Ethan gasped like I'd just admitted to a crime. "You're kidding. You didn't even buy her a dress?" "James, do you have any idea how important a wedding day is to a woman?" He caught himself and shook his head with fake regret. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't judge. I'm sure you had your reasons." I rolled my eyes and looked at Ava, expecting her to join in on the James bashing, but she just stayed silent and watched the trail ahead. Something about the energy between them fell off. The fans were already complaining about me in the comments. "James is such a mood killer," one wrote. "This is a romance show, and he's out here bragging about having a terrible marriage." The producers must be fuming. To be fair, Ethan was the one who started it, someone pointed out. "He's totally gaslighting James." Another fan added, "Are you kidding? The producers love this. Look at the view count. It's through the roof because of the drama." There were 3 different trails to the top, and we had to draw straws to see which one we'd take. Once the lots were drawn, the group split up. Suddenly, it was just me, Ava, and a small camera crew in the middle of the woods. It was basically forced quality time. I had zero interest in talking to her. I just wanted to get to the top so I could eat that prize dinner. I started power walking up the hill, but Ava kept slowing me down, asking for help over rocks or telling me to wait up every 5 minutes. When we hit the first photo op, I stood next to her with a look of pure annoyance. "Let's just get this over with," I muttered. 1, 2, 3, cheese. We ended up with a photo that looked like 2 strangers waiting for a bus. For some reason, I actually smiled right as the shutter clicked. The photographer looked at the screen and nodded. "Wow, you guys actually look really good together. Great chemistry." I just sighed. He was clearly delusional. The final photo spot was a massive grove of cherry blossoms. It was early April in South Carolina, and the weather was perfect. A light breeze caught the petals, sending them swirling through the air like pink and white snow. Ava was standing right in the middle of the falling petals, wearing a sundress that made her look ethereal. For a split second, I felt a strange tug in my chest. I reminded myself that beautiful women are dangerous, especially when they aren't even trying. I walked over and draped an arm around her shoulder, trying to look like a loving husband for the camera. Ava let out a cold snort. "You literally just jogged 20 feet to get into this shot, James. You call that natural?" I had no comeback for that. Since when was she a director? I reached down and clicked off my microphone, then motioned for her to do the same. Once I was sure the crew couldn't hear us, I leaned in. "Look, let's stop the charade," I whispered. "We didn't even go to the same high school, so let's drop the high school sweetheart story, okay?" In the original book, they didn't meet until they were adults on a movie set. Ava had been there to see Ethan, and James had been the idiot who fell for her the moment he saw her. Ava stayed quiet, her eyes searching mine for something I couldn't identify. "If you play along," she whispered, "I'll add another 10 million to the divorce settlement." My heart nearly stopped. 10 million? Forget the money, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm just doing this because I care about your reputation." Trying to get a perfect running through the flowers shot was a nightmare for the camera guys. Luckily, the producers had hired an avant-garde photography studio that specialized in high-concept weddings. They were experts at making people who hated each other look like they were in a Hallmark movie. I had to run through those trees 5 times before the photographer was satisfied. Again, more passion. "Look at her like she's the only girl in the world," he shouted. All I could think about was that extra $10 million. I'd have run a marathon for that kind of cash. My entire early retirement plan depended on this performance. The assistant director was shouting instructions from the sidelines. "Get closer. Hold her like you mean it." I reached out and yanked Ava toward me, pulling her flush against my chest. She stumbled, her hands instinctively grabbing my waist to steady herself. I looked down, and for a second, our eyes locked. She looked surprisingly soft in that light. and I could have sworn I saw a tiny smile playing on her lips. "Perfect! That's the shot," the photographer yelled. The moment he spoke, Ava's face turned beet red, and she shoved me away. I just stood there, confused. She was the one who offered me the bribe to act romantic, and now she was acting embarrassed. She hurried over to the photographer to check the screen. I was curious to see how it turned out, so I started to follow her, but she turned around and shooed me away. "Go away, James. Didn't you say you were starving? Go find some food." I couldn't argue with that logic. We were the first ones to reach the summit, beating out the other couples. Before the others arrived, I leaned over to her. "Just so we're clear, even if that photo sucks, I'm still getting that extra 10 million, right?" Ava gave me a look that said she knew exactly what kind of scumbag I was. I felt a little guilty since it was so much money for 5 minutes of work, so I added, "Tell you what, I'll give you a small discount for being a good sport." I headed straight for the picnic setup, ready to gorge myself on whatever the producers had provided. But when I saw the prize, my heart sank. It was just a pile of raw seafood and vegetables. We had to cook the damn meal ourselves. I was a disaster in the kitchen. The only thing I knew how to make was cereal. Ava was a billionaire's daughter, so she probably didn't even know how to boil water. David's group got pre-cooked steaks, and even Ethan, who finished last, at least got some gourmet sandwiches. I was stuck with a bucket of raw shrimp and some unwashed spinach. I grabbed a head of lettuce and some ranch dressing and looked at Ava. "Well, looks like we're having salad for dinner. Want some?" Ava just looked at me like I was an idiot. "I know how to cook, James." I was shocked when Ava pulled her hair back into a ponytail and started prepping the vegetables. She was actually good at it, slicing through the peppers like a pro. Since I was useless, I just stood there and acted like her biggest fan. "Wow, look at those julienne carrots," I exclaimed. "It smells amazing already." I was about to go for a third compliment when Ava shot me a death stare. "Go sit down somewhere and stay out of the way, James." I did as I was told, but I made sure to grab her a comfortable chair first. By the time the other couples finally reached the summit, they found me napping in a hammock while Ava was busy stir-frying a world-class seafood meal. David walked up and started laughing. "James, man, you hit the jackpot with her." I just blinked at him. He grinned and added, "I bet you live like a king with her taking care of you at home." I didn't have the heart to tell him. I didn't even know she knew where the kitchen was. In the original book, Ava was a spoiled princess who never lifted a finger, so I had no idea how she'd suddenly become a master chef. Everyone was gathered around the stove to watch her work, except for Ethan. He walked over to me, positioning himself so his back was to the camera. He had this look on his face that I'd never seen before. His features were twisted with pure, unadulterated rage. If anyone looked like a villain in that moment, it was him. He didn't say anything. He just stood there staring at me with terrifying intensity for about 10 seconds. I was totally confused. Wasn't he supposed to be over Ava? According to the plot, he wasn't supposed to care about me at all. Why was he looking at me like I'd just stolen his most prized possession? The live stream was still going, and the viewers were obsessed with Ava's cooking. "If my wife could cook like that, I'd never leave the house," one person wrote. "I literally just ordered more food because watching her is making me starve." When Ava finally served the seafood fried rice, I had to give her credit. It tasted incredible and looked like it came from a 5-star restaurant in Manhattan. They always say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, and she was definitely winning. After lunch, the group was hanging out and playing games. I noticed Ava slip away toward the trees, and a few minutes later, Ethan made some lame excuse to leave too. I knew something was up. I followed them at a distance, hiding behind a large oak tree. I heard Ethan say, "Ava, I need to ask you for a huge favor." His tone was weirdly formal. I thought he was the guy she was supposed to be obsessed with, but he was talking to her like she was his boss. I couldn't hear the rest of the conversation because the wind picked up, but I could see them clearly. Ethan looked like he was pleading for something, and Ava was just standing there with her arms crossed, shaking her head. Ethan looked absolutely desperate. I didn't want to get caught spying, so I slipped back into the lodge. As soon as Ava walked through the door, I intercepted her before she could go to her room. "Okay, level with me," I said. "What is the deal with you and Ethan?" Ava looked at me, her expression neutral. "What do you mean?" she asked. I'm not blind, Ava. Ethan is clearly into you, and the rumors say you were into him. If you were so perfect for each other, why did you marry me instead? Ava's face went completely cold. I put my hands up defensively. Look, I'm going to be your ex-husband soon. I know the code of silence. I won't tell anyone. Ava let out a harsh laugh. What makes you think I ever liked that guy? I blinked, totally caught off guard. I mean, it was literally the plot of the book. The whole internet says you're his biggest fan, I argued. Why else would the Sterling Media Group spend millions promoting his career? Everyone thinks you're just a rich girl using her family's money to help her celebrity crush. Ava looked me dead in the eye. James, I have never once lied to you. I froze. What is she talking about? Then it hit me, her comment in the van about having a crush on me since high school. Was the plot of this book actually completely wrong? I was supposedly the one with the script, but now I felt like a total stranger in my own story. I didn't know what to believe anymore. My new plan was simple. Keep my eyes open and figure out what game she was playing. I wandered back to the lobby, my head spinning. I was mindlessly flipping through apps on my phone when I saw a notification from the show's official Instagram. They had posted a gallery of the photos from the hike. David and Anna's photo was classic. They just looked like a couple who had been happily married for 30 years. Ethan and Hannah's shots looked like a Vogue spread. They had one of them running through the trees and another of Ethan lifting her up like a movie hero. Then I saw the photos of me and Ava. In the first one, I had my arm around her and was laughing at something, while Ava was leaning into me, looking up at my face with this soft expression. The photographer was a genius because he turned a moment of pure awkwardness into something that looked like true love. I swiped to the next photo, and my breath caught. It was the shot in the cherry blossom grove. The petals were falling all around us like snow. I was running toward Ava, and the way the light hit me made me look almost like a ghost, while Ava stood there bathed in a warm, soft glow. The contrast between the motion and the stillness was breathtaking. It was a beautiful photo, almost hauntingly so. The fans on TikTok were going crazy. This is art, one wrote. It looks like a girl waiting for her time-traveling boyfriend to finally come home. Saving this for my wallpaper, another person commented. I found myself long pressing the screen and saving the photo to my own phone before I even realized what I was doing. I heard someone chuckle behind me and turned to see David watching me with a knowing smirk. I'm just checking the composition, I stammered. The lighting is really technically impressive. David just nodded, clearly not believing a word of it. I wanted to scream that I was just being an art critic, but I knew it would just make me look more guilty. Just then, Ava came down the stairs, talking a mile a minute on her phone. Make sure everyone sees the post, she was saying. David waved her over. It's a great photo, Ava, but Anna and I have been campaigning all afternoon. You've got some stiff competition. Ava just gave him a little smirk. Oh, I'm campaigning too. She had just set up a Twitter account an hour ago, specifically for the show. Her first and only post was a retweet of our photo with the caption, "Vote for us." I was speechless. That wasn't a request. It was a royal decree. And apparently, it worked. Our vote count started climbing so fast, it looked like the counter was broken. The retweets were insane. It wasn't just fans. It was every major corporation owned by the Sterling family, plus a handful of billionaires who usually only appeared in Forbes. David started laughing. It looks like you're announcing a merger rather than a photo contest. I should probably retweet it too, just to be safe. I was completely overwhelmed. I grabbed Ava's arm and pulled her into a quiet corner, making sure my mic was covered. Are you insane? I hissed. If you make this such a huge deal, the whole world is going to be watching us. How are we supposed to get a quiet divorce after this? She just looked at me with a cold, piercing gaze. Who said I wanted a divorce, James? I went numb. If there was no divorce, there was no $10 million bonus. I opened my mouth to argue, but then I noticed the live stream comments scrolling by. Oh my God, they're whispering in the corner, one fan squealed. Someone turn up the mic. I need to know what they're saying. The votes kept pouring in until the deadline, and we won by a landslide. We hadn't even found out what the prize was before the producers dropped the next bombshell. Tomorrow, the couples were going on a wilderness camping trip. I couldn't stop worrying about the camping trip. I spent 10 minutes pacing the hallway outside Ava's room before I finally got the courage to knock. When she opened the door, she was in a plush white robe, looking like she just stepped out of a spa. The robe was a little loose at the collar, and I accidentally caught a glimpse of her collarbone before I forced my eyes down to the carpet. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding a little strained. "You know we're supposed to go camping tomorrow, right?" "The producers said it's an overnight trip," I continued. "In a tent." Ava just nodded. "I heard." She didn't seem bothered at all. "That's it?" I asked. "You're not worried?" "We're going to be sharing a sleeping bag, essentially." Ava gave me a dry look. "What are you so stressed about, James? Are you afraid I'm going to attack you in your sleep?" I didn't know how to respond to that. "I'm more worried about what I might do," I muttered under my breath. Ava just sighed and said, "Oh, in that case, I have nothing to worry about." Then she slammed the door in my face. I stood in the hall, completely baffled. What happened to the woman who couldn't stand to be in the same room as me? If she wasn't worried, I wasn't going to lose sleep over it either. The next day, we were dropped off at a beautiful lakeside campsite. We had to set up our own gear, but since we'd won the photo contest, we got first pick of the equipment. I immediately grabbed the biggest tent they had, purely for safety reasons, of course. The only problem was that I had no idea how to put the thing together. David and Anna already had their campsite looking like a professional catalog, while mine was just a pile of poles and canvas. "Do you need me to go get David?" Ava asked, looking at me with pity. "I got it," I snapped, refusing to admit defeat. I told her to go walk by the lake so I could concentrate on the instructions without her judging me. I was wrestling with a tent pole when Ethan walked up. He looked like hell, with massive dark circles under his eyes. "You saw us yesterday, didn't you?" he said, his voice low. I looked up totally confused. He glared at me. "Don't play dumb. I know you saw me talking to her." He looked like he wanted to punch something. "I was just asking her to help Hannah get a role at Sterling Media. She turned me down flat. She used to do anything for me, but since you started acting like a decent guy, she's changed." I just stared at him. "How is that my fault?" Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "You really think she's falling for you? Wake up, James. We're both just placeholders for her." He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a charcoal sketch. "This is the guy she's actually in love with," he said smugly. My heart dropped. The guy in the drawing looked exactly like me, only younger and less tired. I was practically a twin for the original James, though a few inches shorter. The guy in the sketch was my spitting image. Ethan saw my face go pale and grinned. "See? You're just a replacement for a ghost." My head started spinning, and I felt like I couldn't get enough air into my lungs. Everything went black, and before I could reach for anything to steady myself, I collapsed onto the grass. When I finally came to, my head was throbbing. It felt like a dam had broken in my mind, and memories that weren't mine started flooding in. I saw myself in a high school uniform, riding a bicycle through the streets of Charleston with Ava on the back. The Ava in my head was younger, her face full of life instead of the sadness she carried now. I looked up and saw her leaning over me, her eyes filled with tears. "James, are you okay?" Her face perfectly matched the girl from my visions. I blinked, and the name just slipped out of my mouth. "Emily." Ava froze, her entire body trembling. She looked at me with wide, hopeful eyes. You remember me?" she whispered. "I only remember the name," I said, my voice hoarse. "Everything else is just flashes." But that was enough for her. She threw her arms around me and sobbed into my chest like her heart was breaking and mending at the same time. "You're shaking, Ava," I whispered. "Just shut up," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. I tried to lighten the mood. "Hey, watch the shirt. I only have a few of these." She let out a watery laugh. "It's just the humidity from the lake, you idiot." The rest of the cast and crew rushed over. "James, man, you okay?" David asked, looking genuinely worried. Ethan was there too, wearing his perfect mask of concern. "Yeah, we were just talking and you went down like a sack of bricks." "I was so worried," Ethan started to say, but Ava shot him a look so lethal he actually flinched and went quiet. I sat up and rubbed my head. "I'm fine, guys. Just a bit of low blood sugar. Nothing to worry about." "You should have seen her," Anna teased. "Ava practically teleported to your side. We thought you were a goner." I found myself squeezing Ava's hand. David patted my shoulder. Don't worry about the campsite. I got your tent set up for you while you were out. I thanked him, but then the reality of the situation hit me. I was going to be sleeping in a tiny tent with Ava. I stalled for as long as I could, hanging out by the fire until the last person had turned in for the night before I finally walked toward her tent. Ava was already inside, illuminated by a small lantern. Finally decided to join me? I figured you were going to beg David for a spot in his tent. Honestly, I had considered it. I sat down on my sleeping bag and looked at her. Ava, do we really know each other back in the day? She gave a soft nod. Yeah, we did. I was completely lost. How could that be possible? I'd only been in this world for a week. How could I have a history with her? She took a deep breath and began to explain. Back in 10th grade, her grandfather had fallen ill and was moved to a hospice in Charleston. Her parents were too busy with the company to visit, so Ava volunteered to stay there and look after him, taking a whole semester off school. There was a winding path through a cherry orchard that led from her guest house to the hospital. It was peak season, and the trees were heavy with blossoms. She used to walk that path every single day, trying not to step on the fallen flowers. She actually hated the path because the falling petals were so messy. But one afternoon, a white sneaker fell out of a tree and landed right at her feet with a thud. She stopped, staring at the shoe in confusion. She looked up and saw a boy perched on a high branch. He was wearing an oversized blue hoodie. His hair was a mess, and he had a lopsided grin that made his eyes crinkle. Hey, he called down nervously. Could you toss that back up here? Ava tossed him the shoe and watched him scramble down the tree like a pro. His hoodie was bulging strangely, and when he unzipped it, a basketball fell out. He tossed the ball over a nearby fence, and a group of kids on the other side started cheering. If you kids lose it again, you're on your own, he yelled over the fence. He turned back to Ava and brushed the leaves out of his hair. I'm James. Thanks for the save. And just like that, Ava had found her first real friend in Charleston. This James kid was always in a good mood, but he said the weirdest things. He'd complain about being trapped in the wrong timeline, or moan about having to study history when he was clearly a science guy. Ava never quite understood what he was talking about, but she liked listening to him. She figured he was just struggling with school, so she offered to tutor him. Before long, they were meeting every afternoon to do homework. Ava was a straight-A student, but James spent most of the time trying to hide comic books behind his textbooks. As long as I pass, I don't care, he'd say, flipping a page of his manga. I'm only going to be here for another 6 months anyway, so none of this matters. When she'd give him a look, he'd just laugh. Don't judge me. Back home, I was a genius. Where are you going after the 6 months? Ava asked once. James just scratched his head. I don't know. The universe glitched, and I'm basically a runaway right now. I'm not even supposed to be in this part of the story. Ava's eyes lit up. Wait, are you going to be an actor? You still need to finish school for that. If you ever want to make it in Hollywood, come find me. My dad can get you the best acting coaches in the world. James just stared at her, impressed. You really have connections like that? Ava nodded. Her family owned Sterling Media, so she knew how the business worked. A few weeks later, James invited her over for dinner. Come on, he said with a grin. I'm going to make you a legendary chicken dinner. Ava was excited, but when she walked into his kitchen, she saw a whole, raw chicken floating in a pot of lukewarm water. Are you just boiling the whole thing? She asked. James shrugged. Trust the process. It might look gross now, but it'll be great. Ava just smiled, making a mental note to actually learn how to cook so they wouldn't starve. But then, a few days later, her grandfather's condition took a turn for the worse. Ava stood in the hospital hallway, her hands trembling as she gripped the fabric of her skirt until her knuckles turned white. Suddenly, James appeared out of nowhere, breathing hard like he'd just run a mile. I skipped my finals to be here with you, he panted. Ava had always been alone, raised by staff and ignored by her parents. But standing there with James, she finally realized how much better it felt to have someone by her side. The doctor came out with the consent forms for the surgery. As she signed her name, James stared at the paper in shock. Wait, your name is Ava Sterling? You told me your name was Emily. Emily was the name my grandfather gave me, she explained. My parents hated it, so they legally changed it to Ava. James looked like he'd just seen a ghost. Oh man, he muttered to himself. I accidentally became best friends with the main character. I just broke the entire story. James had died in his previous life, and this reincarnation was his only shot at survival. He knew he was supposed to be the villain, but he couldn't help himself. He patted Ava's shoulder. Don't worry, Ava. Your grandfather is going to pull through. I'm from the future, remember? He said with a wink. I know how this story ends, and he's going to be fine. Even though he talked like a crazy person, he had never once lied to her. Ava found herself believing him. A few hours later, the doctor confirmed that the surgery was a success. But just as Ava was celebrating, James saw a shimmering message in the air that only he could see. Asterisk timeline stabilized. Extraction beginning tomorrow. Asterisk he knew that by tomorrow, the system would take control of his body and turn him into the arrogant jerk he was destined to be. If he didn't follow the script now, he'd be erased forever. He decided he had to tell her the truth while he still had a chance. James took her hands in his. Ava, I need to tell you something. It's going to sound like a science fiction movie, but I need you to trust me more than you've ever trusted anyone. In a few years, you're going to meet a guy named Ethan, and you're going to fall for him, he said. Ava immediately pulled away. No way. I could never love anyone but you. James just sighed. You haven't met him yet. The script says you guys are soulmates. Just listen, he urged. After that, I'm going to turn into a total prick and spend years chasing you until you finally agree to marry me. Stop laughing, I'm serious. Ava looked at him, her young face suddenly looking very determined. I understand, she said softly. I'll play the role, she promised. Just promise me you'll come back to me. James squeezed her hand. I'll do my best. If everything works out, I'll be back in 5 years. Ava bit her lip. What do you really look like? In your world? James smiled. Pretty much like this, just a couple inches shorter. That night, Ava sat on a park bench outside his apartment until the sun came up. The streetlights cast long, lonely shadows across the pavement. The next morning, she saw James walk out of the front door. He walked right past her like she wasn't even there. There was no recognition in his eyes. He was just a stranger with a familiar face. Ava felt like the world had stopped spinning. She walked back to the hospital, and as she passed the cherry trees, she realized all the petals were gone. Everything happened exactly the way James had predicted. She met Ethan and played her part perfectly, using her family's influence to make him a star. The only thing that didn't go according to the script was when Ethan decided to propose to her in front of a massive crowd at a movie premiere. She rejected him without a second thought. Ethan was devastated, unable to understand how the girl who had built his career didn't love him. Ava just turned to her security team. Get him out of here. If he ever gets this close to me again, you're all fired. By then, the villain James was already a household name, but the boy from the cherry orchard was nowhere to be found. He had promised 5 years, but 8 had gone by. You're a liar, James, she whispered to herself every night. For the season finale, the producers decided to take us back to our roots. They brought in some guest stars and sent our team back to Charleston to film the final scenes. It was the exact same place where Ava's story had begun. The theme was young love, and the costume department had managed to find authentic local high school uniforms for us. When Ava walked out of the dressing room in that pleated skirt and white shirt, I forgot how to breathe. She was stunning, the perfect image of the girl who had been haunting my memories. She looked down at her outfit, blushing slightly. Do I look ridiculous? She asked. I just shook my head. You look exactly like the girl from my dreams. She gave me a playful frown. I hope these were appropriate dreams, James. Nothing R-rated, I hope. I just stood there, embarrassed. The TikTok comments were moving so fast, I couldn't even read them. Tell us everything, one fan wrote. We need all the details. Ava hopped on the back of my bike and told me to take her to all our old spots. She thought it might help me remember the rest of our history. Just don't start making up stories about how much of a jerk I was, I joked. I have enough bad press already. I knew she was just teasing me. We rode to the cherry orchard, walked through the old hospital halls where we used to study, and finally ended up at her grandfather's grave. It was a beautiful, quiet spot overlooking the water. We stood there for a long time, Ava leaning against me while the wind ruffled her hair. As we were getting ready to head back, I turned to her. I want to have a quick word with him alone, I said. Go wait by the car for a second. I waited until she was out of earshot before I turned back to the grave. I gave a small bow to the man I'd never officially met. I'm sorry it took me 8 years to find my way back to her, I whispered. I promise I'm never leaving her side again. Once the show aired, Ava and I became the nation's favorite couple. I was the #1 trending topic on Twitter every single night. My agent was calling me every hour with movie deals and talk show invites, but I turned them all down. I'd already wasted 8 years of her life, and I wasn't going to waste another second on fame. One night, while we were lounging at home, Ava looked at me and asked, "Can we have a real wedding this time?" I just laughed. Ava, we've been married for a year. Why would we go through all that stress now? Let's just stick with what we have, I teased. Unless you really want that divorce settlement. Ava was not amused. She shoved me off the couch and glared at me. You're unbelievable, James. You get what you want, and then you run away. She stomped off to the bathroom to take a shower. I lay there grinning, knowing that I already had a ring and a venue booked for next month. I sat up and took a drink of water to calm my nerves. I accidentally pulled the nightstand drawer open a bit too far and noticed a leather journal tucked in the back. I knew I shouldn't look, but I couldn't help myself. I opened to the first page. March 2015. I finally learned how to cook. I'm going to be the best wife ever when you get back. I can't wait to surprise you. I flipped forward a year. August 2016. James started college today. He doesn't look at me, but I'm still watching him. The guy who stole your body is actually pretty talented, but he's not you. If you were here, you'd probably be failing all your classes, she'd written. He claims he's a genius, but I know better. Then, another entry. October 2017. Some girl was flirting with him today. You never told me if I had to let him date other people. I'm assuming that's not part of the official script, so I'm putting a stop to it. He's supposed to be mine, so he doesn't get to have a girlfriend. I broke them up today. No regrets. I skipped to 2019. May 2019. I met Ethan today. Exactly like you described. I almost tripped and fell into his arm just like the script said, but I caught myself. I'm not letting anyone but you touch me. He's a jerk. I don't know what you were thinking when you wrote this story. January 2020. Grandpa died. I'm back in Charleston for the funeral. Where are you? I'm starting to forget what your voice sounds like. Please come back. I don't think I can wait much longer. The line was scratched out with heavy ink. I'll wait. But you need to hurry. September 2020. I got my dad to sign Ethan. I went to the movie set today because you said that's where we were supposed to meet. I brought lunch and everything. I spent 2 hours making that special chicken dinner you liked. But when I got there, I realized it was still the other guy. He looked like you, but his soul was empty. I ate the dinner myself and gave him a cup of noodles. November 2022. I married him. I'm doing everything you told me to do, but you're still not here. Are you ever coming back? September 2024. We're filming the reality show. If you don't show up now, I'm giving up. I can't do this anymore. I hate this show. I hate these people. I only did it because it was our last chance. Please, James, be there. The last entry was written in shaky handwriting. Is it you? I'm so afraid to hope. Is it really you? The journal ended there. I realized I was crying, the tears streaming down my face and soaking into the pages. I quickly wiped my eyes and tucked the book back into the drawer, my heart racing. Ava, I shouted, running to the bathroom door. I fumbled in my pocket and pulled out the diamond ring I'd been hiding. Open up. I have something for you. Before I could say another word, the door creaked open. Ava poked her head out, her hair dripping wet. James? I'm in the shower. What's going on? I just looked at her, my heart full of 8 years of her love. I can't hear you over the water, I said with a grin. I think I need to come in there and tell you in person. 8 years. She had spent nearly a decade waiting for a ghost. Every single day, she'd held on to the hope that I'd come back to her. I almost walked away with her money, leaving her alone again. The worst kind of betrayal isn't falling out of love. It's promising to return and then forgetting you ever made the promise. I had forgotten her, but she had chosen me every single time. I realized that the plot I thought I was following was actually just a girl doing everything in her power to find a man she loved. Loving someone means making sure they know the wait was worth it. Even if you're late, you have to show up eventually. As the bathroom door swung wide, I dropped down onto one knee, holding the ring out. I looked into her eyes and promised myself that I would never make her wait for me ever again.